Before massive science fiction franchises took over television, there was Lost in Space, a series that began as a serious survival adventure before transforming into one of the strangest shows of the 1960s. At first glance, the program looked like a straightforward story about a family trapped in deep space, struggling against dangerous planets and mysterious alien threats. But behind the scenes, almost everything about the production was chaotic. Scripts changed constantly, actors disagreed over the direction of the series, and the production team battled budget problems almost every week. Over time, the show slowly evolved from dramatic science fiction into colorful camp entertainment filled with outrageous creatures, exaggerated comedy, and bizarre adventures. Despite all the confusion surrounding its production, Lost in Space somehow became unforgettable. Its unusual mix of heartfelt family moments, strange humor, and imaginative storytelling gave it a unique identity unlike anything else on television. Decades later, fans still remember the Robinson family, Dr. Smith, and the robot as some of the most iconic characters in classic science fiction history. One of the strangest facts about the series is that the Robinson family originally looked nothing like the warm and friendly version audiences eventually loved. Early story concepts imagined a much colder and more dramatic survival story where tension inside the family created as much danger as the alien world surrounding them. Certain characters were written to be far harsher, and relationships between family members lacked warmth or trust. Producers originally wanted the series to feel more serious and emotionally intense. However, after the pilot episode was completed, they realized the darker tone was not connecting with viewers the way they expected. Slowly, the scripts changed. Another major transformation involved the robot, who nearly looked terrifying instead of lovable. Early designs imagined the robot as a cold metallic machine that resembled a dangerous war device rather than a friendly protector. Initial sketches showed sharp edges, darker features, and an emotionless appearance that made the character seem intimidating standing beside the Robinson children. Producers quickly realized this approach would not appeal to family audiences, especially younger viewers watching at home. The network worried children might actually be frightened by the robot instead of emotionally connecting with him. Designers softened the character by giving him a rounder body shape, smoother movements, and a more human personality. Over time, the robot transformed from a threatening machine into a loyal companion audiences trusted immediately. His famous warning phrase, "Danger, Will Robinson," was not even meant to become iconic at first. It began as ordinary dialogue repeated during tense scenes, but audiences loved hearing it. Eventually, the line escaped the show itself and became one of the most recognizable catchphrases in all of science fiction television history. Perhaps the biggest surprise behind Lost in Space involved Dr. Zachary Smith. Today, it is impossible to imagine the series without him, but actor Jonathan Harris was originally hired only for a limited number of episodes. Dr. Smith was supposed to be a temporary villain whose selfish actions endangered the Robinson family before disappearing from the story entirely. Everything changed the moment Harris stepped in front of the camera. Instead of playing Smith as a straightforward saboteur, he filled scenes with dramatic reactions, theatrical insults, nervous panic, and unexpected comedy. He constantly improvised dialogue during filming, adding small comments and exaggerated behavior that made the cast laugh and immediately grabbed attention. The basic concept behind the series was also less original than many fans realize. Lost in Space borrowed heavily from the classic survival story Swiss Family Robinson. Both stories focused on a family suddenly isolated from civilization and forced to survive in an unfamiliar environment filled with danger. Instead of being trapped on a tropical island, however, the Robinson family became stranded in deep space among alien planets and cosmic disasters. The similarities between the two stories were obvious. Both families relied on intelligence, teamwork, creativity, and scientific problem-solving to survive. Even the family name, Robinson, served as a direct connection to the original source material. The creators understood that audiences already enjoyed survival adventures, so they modernized the concept by combining it with futuristic science fiction. That blend of traditional family storytelling and space exploration helped Lost in Space stand apart from other science fiction programs during the 1960s. Beneath the strange creatures and colorful adventures, the emotional core of the show always remained centered around a family trying to build a home while completely cut off from Earth. Although the Jupiter 2 spacecraft looked massive on television, the actual sets were incredibly cramped behind the scenes. On screen, viewers saw spacious control rooms, scientific laboratories, sleeping quarters, and futuristic hallways large enough for endless adventures. In reality, most of the sets were squeezed tightly inside small sound stages packed with cameras, wires, lights, and props. The production team relied heavily on camera tricks to create the illusion of space. Certain walls could be removed so cameras could fit into impossible positions, while lighting and careful framing helped narrow hallways appear much larger than they really were. Actors constantly struggled to move around comfortably during scenes involving multiple cast members. The robot costume itself created another nightmare behind the scenes. Actor Bob May spent long hours trapped inside a heavy mechanical suit designed to look futuristic on camera but extremely uncomfortable in reality. The costume was bulky, difficult to balance in, and almost impossible to wear comfortably under hot studio lights. Temperatures inside the suit quickly became unbearable because airflow was limited and the heavy materials trapped heat around May's body. Vision inside the robot costume was also extremely restricted, forcing him to move carefully around crowded sets filled with cables and props. Even simple movements required concentration and physical effort. Many viewers assumed Bob May controlled all of the robot's movements himself, but several mechanical parts actually required off-camera puppeteers working in synchronization. The famous head motions and facial features depended on multiple operators coordinating perfectly to create realistic reactions. While audiences saw a charming robotic companion, the performance behind the scenes involved intense physical discomfort and complicated teamwork during almost every episode filmed for the series. One of the clearest signs that Lost in Space was changing could actually be heard in its opening theme music. During the first season, the series used darker and more dramatic music that matched its serious science fiction atmosphere. Combined with black and white visuals, the early episodes felt tense and mysterious, emphasizing survival and danger in deep space. However, once producers realized audiences responded more strongly to humor and bizarre adventures, the entire tone of the series shifted. The second season introduced a completely different opening theme that sounded brighter, faster, and far more playful. Instead of warning viewers about cosmic danger, the new music felt almost cheerful, inviting audiences into another strange adventure filled with comedy and chaos. Budget problems constantly haunted the production and forced the crew to become extremely creative. Science fiction television was expensive during the 1960s because every episode required alien creatures, futuristic technology, costumes, and special effects. Unfortunately, Lost in Space rarely had enough money to support its ambitious ideas. To save costs, the production team regularly reused sets, props, costumes, and visual effects from previous episodes or even entirely different studio productions. Alien monsters were often created from leftover fabrics, rubber parts, masks, and random objects painted to look futuristic. Some creatures looked convincing under dramatic lighting, while others clearly resembled cheap costumes thrown together at the last second. Even advanced-looking space technology frequently came from recycled studio warehouse props modified with flashing lights and fresh paint. The series survived largely through imagination rather than realism. Despite these financial limitations, the production team somehow managed to create a memorable universe that audiences accepted because of its creativity, energy, and constant sense of unpredictable adventure. Another major reason the show changed so drastically involved competition with Star Trek. During the 1960s, audiences became fascinated with space exploration thanks to the real-world space race. Networks suddenly wanted science fiction programs capable of attracting viewers interested in astronauts and futuristic adventures. Lost in Space and Star Trek debuted around the same period, which immediately led to comparisons between the two series. Early on, both programs shared serious science fiction themes and dangerous adventures. However, as ratings competition increased, the two shows evolved in completely opposite directions. Star Trek continued emphasizing philosophical science fiction and exploration,